if you're finding controllers for the Nintendo Switch to be too expensive to get a Pro controller, if the Joy-Con is just not quite getting you everything you need. I mean, it's a very versatile controller when it's on the side of the tablet. Might not necessarily be good for, say, beat-em-ups on the Switch, or it might not be. Well, I can tell you it's not good for the beat-em-ups because if you're trying to play Street Fighter and a Joy-Con power to you, because that's a struggle. I have got some alternatives for you, and it all comes from 8bitdo. Rather than looking around for a new set of controllers I could buy, I wondered if there was something I could buy to use the controllers I already had. I managed to get past it on the Wii when I first had that, with my GameCube controllers working on that. So I just wondered if there was something out there, and I stumbled across this. This is the 8bitdo USB block. And I think it's about £15. This little thing, which is here, that's all it is. It's a tiny little thing like that. It's got, take the top off, and there's a USB. And that simply plugs into the side of your Switch. You take the top off. I tend to keep the little block bit here inside the flap of the dock. Seal it back up and I don't lose that little bit. But this goes into the side of the dock itself. And basically you're away. And what this does, believe it or not, is once it's plugged in and you've detected it, it works with the following controllers which you see on screen. So not only can you buy 8bitdo controllers to work with this device that your Switch will pick up, it also will allow you to use PS5 controllers, Xbox One S and Xbox One X controllers, PlayStation 4, and PS3 controllers, and also works with which I particularly like. I like using the Wii U pad on the actual device. I don't know if you can see it there. You can see that little button at the bottom there. You basically plug it in, you press that little button on the bottom, and then you just press the sync button, which on my Switch pad is there. You press the sync button with the controller and it pairs directly to the USB stick. So yeah, Xbox 360, Xbox One X, the PS4 and PS4 5 pads, they can all sync to the device the same way. Switch picks it up like it's a Pro controller, and away you go. The other beauty of it is you don't have to calibrate anything. Back when you were using different controllers and things, you had to calibrate the buttons. I want this button to be that button to be this, press start, press whatever. And don't even start with like analog controls and making sure it's centered perfectly and not kind of tailing off because as a default controllers don't pick it up. All of that stuff. You don't have to do any of that. It's already preset. You can use it on PC devices as well. So put the little USB stick into your PC. Any controller you've synced to it will immediately pick it up on the PC. You may need to calibrate a bit more on PC because of the range of how it all works. But I can tell you it works. Whether it works with everything, I'm not too sure on the calibration of it, because I think PC is a bit more tricky. But yeah, dead simple. How much is the device? About £15, as I say. So you're probably saying about it right now. You've probably got all the controllers you need in the house. You just can go on 8bitdo and grab that little device and go for it. However, if you are looking for, maybe your Switch is more of a kind of a retro console, maybe you enjoy your Super Nintendo or NES games. So 8bitdo also redo controllers from past eras and update them and release them for the Switch. Now, you don't actually need the device to link these controllers to the Switch. And you also, I've got one here. Pretty neat stuff. On the back of it, they've actually got different modes. Can you see there? No, you can't because it's not in focus. But yeah, they actually do these different modes that if you start up the controller in different ways, they link to different devices. I mean, these things can link to Android, PC, Switch, all manner of stuff. And again, they're already preloaded with what you need to get them going. And these, like I say, ideal for indie games and playing some of the retro games on the Switch, but they also work for PC again. These are around about £35, so again, almost half the price of a Pro controller. So I can really vouch for those. The one thing I will say is, with the two that I have got, I mean, I've been using these for about 5 years, as I say. The NES version, obviously, there's two versions of the NES controller. There's one that's more traditionally shaped with 2 buttons, I believe. There's one that's actually, you know, like the NES kind of square shape rather than circular like this. They have 4 buttons, but it's squared. I went with this one because of the thumbsticks and it's more curvature, and I quite like that. It's kind of NES themed. And this controller does feel really nice. The only thing is, it is kind of, it's like holding a disc because of the way it's kind of shaped. And the thumbsticks, they feel good enough, but if you're looking for more, what should we say, precision, the thumbsticks on this are a little too small. But apart from that, again, 5 years use, never had a problem. The controller battery life is about, I think I played like 5-6 hours before having to really charge it up and stuff. Really good. And once I synced it to my Switch, every button worked. I didn't need to sync anything or recalibrate anything. It was all kind of there. So that's really decent. As for the SNES controller, probably one of the best controllers ever made. But what I particularly like, they kind of, on the NES one, they got 2 shoulder buttons. You can't really see it there, but there's a button here. But we'll do it that way around. There's buttons there. That's like your R1s, sorry, R2s, and there's your R1 and R2. So they did them indented to keep the more traditional NES controller. As for the Super Nintendo version, you can see that there's the shoulder buttons there for R1 and shoulder buttons there for R2. So that already makes it more comfortable to hold, and the thumbsticks are in quite a nice place. Now this, if you're going to choose one or the other, I'd probably say this is the better controller to go with. I don't know if they've changed it recently, because like I said, this is 5 years old, but what I will say, the only problem I've had with this controller is the thumbsticks are a little worn. Now, that didn't take long to happen. If you remember, the PlayStation 4 had that problem with the rubber being quite cheap, and after a little while of play, the rubber wore away, and there was this big kind of controversy about getting it replaced and whatever. It reminds me a bit like that. It's not nearly as bad, but again, the rubber on the controller is starting to wear out on the left thumbstick there. So that's probably the only problem. I reckon they've probably had feedback from the general public and got that changed nowadays. But if I had to be honest with you, that's the only issue I've had. Apart from that, it's probably one of the most comfortable controllers. And unlike, you know, when your friends come around, you play that game, you tend to give them, maybe you don't these days, but you tend to have the proper controller for yourself, and you couldn't afford another controller because it's too expensive. So you get this third-party cheap controller, and they always complain, oh yeah, give me the rubbish controller. And any game you play, if they lose, that's the thing they use. Oh yeah, but you only lost because you gave me the rubbish controller. No one's ever complained to me about using this pad, so it's a really good addition and separate device to have as a second controller. And you literally just hold the button. I'm not going to do it because I'll probably turn a console in the other room. But you basically hold the start button. The lights at the bottom of it will flash, and then you know it's synced for whatever you've done. And they all work the same way, but when you hold one of the face buttons, either Y, X, A or B, when you hold start, it knows what device you linked it to under that button next. So you can have 4 different devices programmed to it, providing they're not the same device. For example, you couldn't have 2 switches and it would be able to tell it apart, but you could have a PC device and a Switch device, and it would know if you hold Y or held X when you start, which one you're trying to pair it to. Wow, you guys are chatting. What's the lag? No lag. I've got no lag whatsoever. At least I can't tell. I play fighting games with these things, and I've never had any input delay or anything. No problems whatsoever. So no lag at all that I can tell. You can use these wired as well, right? I know my friend uses a M30 wired. You can, yeah, if you've got the right device. I don't think I've got a because there's 2 different. That's probably another thing to think about. Each of the 2, they come with a cable when you buy them, so it's not too much of a problem, and they're reasonably sized. I think about 2 meters. But there's at the top of the device, there's a mini USB style, and I can't remember what the names of them are. You'll have to help me out if you know any tech heads in the chat. But you can plug that in there. They go straight to USB, and they can work wired. I don't know if they work wired on the Switch. But what I have done is I've been running out of battery, plugged them in via USB, and they've still had enough life and juice, and they charge while you're using them Bluetooth wirelessly. So you can use them wired if you like on PC. I know that works for a fact. My big meaty hands need big meaty grips. Yeah, it depends. If you can't get on holding a normal SNES pad, that's the test, then you probably will struggle with these. If you're more used to an N64 controller, sorry, not what I'm talking about, Xbox 360 controller, you might be best to go with what we originally said with this, and then getting Xbox 360 paired to it. Would you potentially have to reassign buttons just because the Switch might not have the right assignments, especially with the controller? No, Hyconic, because the controllers, when they release this, is not just a pad. What 8bitdo do, that's not easy to say, is they actually load software into the controller to know what it's connected to, and it will assign the buttons accordingly. So it will know if you've linked it to Steam, it will know if you've linked it to the Switch or to the PS4, 5, whatever. It will know this is the best placement for this button according to the original pad that you had. And if I haven't got into this, but I know it's possible, you can actually plug it into a PC and change the software within the controller to remap a pad if you prefer. I mean, I don't see why you'd want that. Maybe some games would advise from that, especially if you couldn't change the buttons. But most games you can these days. But you can actually reprogramming it if you wanted. So no, you don't need to tell it anything. It's ready to go. That's the 8bitdo controllers. So I highly recommend those. They're very, very affordable. £35 for a controller that can work on everything. If you're going to buy it for one system, it's a bit more of a harder sell, maybe. But if you've got multiple systems like I have, and you don't want to have, I mean, I've got controllers coming out of my ears anyway, Mistress Puff will tell you that. But if you wanted something that would give you more options to use less controllers, I highly recommend the 8bitdo controllers. And if you're not a Nintendo nerd like me, they have alternatives, which we'll have a look at now. You can have the same kind of controllers, but with more of a grip to them, rather than the kind of curvature side. Any fight fans out there, if you like fight sticks, they do that, and this is one of their newer products. And again, that will link to very similar. Well, let's have a look, shall we? This will probably link to very similar the kind of stuff. There's your Switch. I don't. How much is this thing? 80 quid. 80 quid for a fight stick. That's pretty cool. That's pretty good. That might be quite good for your little and chainy if you wanted something smaller for little ones. I'm not too sure about that one. That looks a bit strange, doesn't it? But there's the controller that I've got, which is the SNES version. That's the 4-button NES controller I mentioned. Here's the Mega Drive one. People say it's like the Saturn. I think it's a bit more like a Mega Drive controller, to be fair. It just reminds me more of that. It's got a little bit of Sega Saturn to it. I mean, they're even playing Mega Drive games, look. So yeah, there's what it works on. Raspberry Pi, forgot to mention that. Android, all that kind of stuff. Using it on your phone. If you don't like touch screen buttons on your mobile phone games, you can connect it to that. So you could have your own portable console away from the Switch if you wanted. But that's a really nice pad. There's another one that's coming out soon, which looks more traditionally like a Sega Saturn pad, rather than what I thought is the 6-button Mega Drive pad. But yeah, regardless, I mean, if you're not as fussy as me, just because it doesn't quite look like what you're used to, that's a pretty decent pad. Ones that adapt and click into different consoles. So if you've got a Super Nintendo, be it a mini or a traditional Super Nintendo, you can buy these that come with an extra adapter to plug into the front of the Super Nintendo, like you can see here. And they do that for the NES, USB connections on there, Mega Drive and things of that nature, so there's loads in there. There's your wired pads that you mentioned earlier, I think that was you, Vargas. And then just the adapters themselves, so if you've already got a controller and you think, oh man, I could have got the one with the adapter, you can buy them separately, so you're not going to be out of pocket. And they even do mice. I didn't even know they did mice. Look at that. Imagine going in the office with that. You might as well have gone in with a massive Nintendo t-shirt and said, look, I'd rather be gaming. If you're more of a hands-on, you think, do you know what, this sounds really decent, but I don't quite like their designs, or I'm going to rock up to one of these fight tournaments and I want my own custom controller. They do DIY kits as well, so you can buy just the insides, and sort of if you're that that tech minded, you can build your own controller, or repurpose a controller that you do have, like a Sega Saturn controller, like you can see here. Take off the case, put their insides into it, and suddenly you've got an 8bitdo controller to your own liking. So anybody I know there's a few people in the Discord and in the OLL community who have done this kind of stuff. Certainly, I didn't trust myself to touch any of this kind of stuff. Ask my friends Dragan, we talk about that all the time. But yeah, you can basically just take the software and the hardware of the inside of the controller and make your own. So yeah, that's 8bitdo. I highly recommend anything they do. Before we move on, like I said, my favourite all-purpose controller is the Wii U Pro Pad, purely because of the fact that I prefer, for first-person shooters, I prefer both the thumbsticks to be lined up with one another. And I like the fact they're above, not below, like on the PlayStation. So it just feels more comfortable for me. I'm used to my thumbs being up rather than kind of down like this. I'm adapted again to the PlayStation controller, but I do prefer this, and I think they're particularly sensitive, and a really good pad. And I got it for the Wii U. Obviously, the Wii U was mainly based on the tablet, so I didn't really utilise this controller as much as I really wanted to. And I really wish that a lot of the games had more, especially on the Wii itself, the original Wii, allowed you to use more of the classic pad sort of style. So I really like this pad, and I didn't get to try it as much on the Wii U. But when I got this adapter, and I could use this on all of my Switch games, I have never ever wanted to choose anything else. I absolutely love this pad, for how comfortable it is, for how versatile it is, and the D-pad is actually really nice. I've played all the Street Fighters on the collection that you can get on the Switch, and I've played Power Rangers, which is more like Marvel vs. Capcom, so really quick combo guns. Never had a problem. I've never put any misinputs or anything like that, like I even have on the PlayStation 5 controller, because they have that gapped D-pad. This allows me to roll my thumb across the D-pad quite nicely, and I don't get cut up. Might be because it's calluses on my thumb. I can't say for certain, but my thumb is not sort of ripped up. So I really like this pad. So the fact I can still use it because of 8bitdo. Thank you so much for building that for me. Obviously, I'll still play the GameCube pad on Smash Brothers. I'm not heathen. But yeah, if it's not Smash Brothers, I'll be using that.